What does the recent settlement made by the National Association of Realtors mean for buyers, sellers, and agents? First, I want to say that I love this settlement and the ramifications it brings for consumers and real estate agents. I think the NAR is going to be crushed by this. Most agents will be scrambling to figure out how to navigate the new landscape, and buyers and sellers will be able to determine fees more fairly. Let's start with those that will be affected the least by these changes: home sellers. So what are the pros and cons of how this is going to affect sellers? One pro is they may not pay as much with no commission requirement for buyer's agent. Sellers may save a little more money when they sell their homes. As a listing agent in the past, I've had to publish the amount of commission I offer to pay a buyer's agent if they brought me an acceptable offer for my listing. Buyer's agents could see the amount and be swayed to steer their buyers to my listing or to another offering higher commissions, even if they weren't supposed to. As a listing agent, I could not offer to pay a low commission to one agent and a high commission to another, yet there are some buyer's agents that would be willing to accept a much lower fee than others would. And it doesn't make sense for the seller to have to pay them more than they're worth. If a seller is willing to pay a commission to a buyer's agent, it seems much more appropriate to negotiate that as part of the buyer's offer rather than giving a blanket amount that would hopefully appeal to all buyer's agents. Some sellers may choose to not pay any buyer's commissions, just as they could choose to not pay for any buyer's closing costs or to not accept offers from buyers getting a loan, but that could severely limit the buyer pool. Let's look at a recent example to understand how this can affect things. I recently represented a seller where we sold the home to a buyer who was getting a loan, but in order to get their monthly payment low enough to qualify for our price, they had to pay 4% of the purchase price to buy down the rate. This doesn't inherently present an issue for the seller, except that the buyer didn't have any funds to close available besides their down payment. So the sellers had to determine if they would consider paying 4% for the buyer to buy down their rate or wait for another buyer. In that situation, we negotiated a price high enough to allow for the 4% to be paid by the seller for the buyer, and it would not have been necessary to give a blanket offer to pay 4% for every buyer's closing costs. But with this particular buyer's offer, it made sense to the seller. Sellers will not have to agree upfront to pay a buyer agent's commission, but we will see just how common it is for buyers to request that the sellers pay their buyer agent's commission as part of their offer negotiations. Another pro for sellers is there may not be as many buyers represented by an experienced agent. If the sellers can hire a great agent to work on their behalf, and many buyers choose to be unrepresented, the sellers will be at a major advantage when negotiating price, terms, and repair requests. One con for sellers is that there may be more transactions that will fall out of escrow without buyer representation. Unfortunately, when buyers don't have an agent to help them through a home purchase, they are more likely to make an emotional decision to cancel a contract. Many agents have helped buyers weigh the pros and cons instead of making rash decisions. If you have any questions or comments about how this could affect you as a home buyer, a home seller, or an agent, feel free to reach out. I'm Rob Hale, the Elite Results Team Leader, and I'm excited for what's to come.